Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 28th August 2020. The first article for discussion is Impartial, Aloof and Sober as a Judge. In this article, the author highlights the characteristics a judge has to possess. You know that there is no code of conduct for judges. It is informally implemented by certain notions of the Supreme Court. The judges are expected to be aloof from public life, sober and impartial. But today they are comparing themselves with executive. Added to that, judicial activism have diluted few of these traits. You can see official cars with sirens and red lights for judges too these days, and these are symptomatic of changing values among judges. In relation to contempt of court, recently Prashant Bhushan has tweeted on Chief Justice of India. He was riding a bike, or he was standing on a bike, Harley Davidson bike. In that context, he made a statement which is a personal attack on Chief Justice of India, and also stated that he has locked down the Supreme Court, depriving the people their fundamental right of justice. So, the court, how it has decided the matter, let us observe. The first is related to the conduct of judge and in his personal capacity. If a judge in his personal capacity is criticized, it do not come under the contempt of court. But when a judge is criticized as a judge, as a person who delivers justice, then definitely it comes under contempt of court. So in this context, the fundamental access to justice is denied to the people. That is what is stated to be obstruction of justice, or scandalizing the court, or interfering with the administration of justice. Based on that, the Supreme Court declared Mr. Prashant Bhushan, or convicted Mr. Prashant Bhushan for contempt of court. The next article for discussion is the participants we need in phase 3 trials. Here the author tries to talk about who are expected to participate in phase 3 trials. You know that 2 of the vaccines in India are entering into phase 3 trials. He suggests healthcare workers and vulnerable subjects are the right match. Why healthcare workers? Informed consent, it means any of the participant in the trial has to agree that he knows all the consequences possible and he voluntarily coming forward towards the trial. So that informed consent can be better understood by the healthcare workers. And reporting of the side effects also can be better with healthcare workers. Then why the vulnerable subjects have to be selected? He argues that from the perspective of justice, as these people are at greater risk, these people, and we have to study what are the consequences of this vaccine among these people. If not, they have to wait for longer period to get the vaccine. So if they are made as the subjects in the trial itself, we will get the new learnings and we can also administer the vaccine to this vulnerable population once the trial is finished. The next article, an airtight case. You know, Pulwama attack has killed 40 CRPF Jawans, and Jaish-e-Mohammed claimed the responsibility for this. National Investigation Agency has investigated and is able to build an airtight case against Jaish-e-Mohammed. But the worrisome thing here is many of the young people from Kashmir also have cooperated with Jaish-e-Mohammed. How? Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, all these are able to recruit these young minds in Kashmir. That needs to be understood and addressed. The article states that alienation of these young minds need to be arrested immediately. Why they are getting alienated? A sense of discrimination is the major reason for this. Next is a no-win situation. You know that there is almost kind of a warlike environment between government and opposition parties on conduct of JEE and NEET examinations. And Supreme Court also did not support the postponing of this exam. The fear expressed by the Supreme Court or government is the year can be may become 0 year, which can affect the students' prospects of education. On the other hand, parents, opposition parties, they talk about the chances of getting infected with COVID-19. In this case, what shall be a mean path? Understand, today NEET examination is a centralized common exam. Rather than conducting a competitive exam, why can't the students be given seats in these prestigious institutions based on their marks in plus to the pass out examination? That is what is suggested. The next article is, can a digital ID aid India's primary health ecosystem? I can call this as an article of the day, and you can expect a question directly from UPSC like this. So I have reorganized this interview and debate to provide brief points to you. You know, Government of India proposed National Digital Health Mission for upgrading, consolidating and retrieving medical data immediately. So, how to make this national health mission, digital health mission successful? If it has to be grounded well, what are the steps we need to take first? You know, primary healthcare systems need to be upgraded. The data has to be first generated from primary healthcare and private healthcare setups, and then move towards the secondary tertiary healthcare. Upgrading, consolidating, retrieving medical data at the level of the primary healthcare centers is very much important. Next, private healthcare. You know, today people are accessing the private healthcare directly rather than depending upon the PHCs. How many private healthcare centers joins this network? So much successful it will be. So, integrating the private healthcare setups is important in this. Next is e-prescription, real-time authentication. You need to understand these two. Like if you go to a doctor writes it on a paper. Rather than writing on a paper, he has to type it on a computer, and then you'll go and test yourself in a lab. In the lab, the lab technician will authorize that. Pharmacist will issue the medicines based on the doctor's prescription. This entire process of authentication and e-prescription and conduct of the test, everything has to be seamless. There has to be interoperability across the laboratories, pharmacists, doctors, everyone. Then the data will be rightly accumulated and the project will be much useful. But biggest concern is there. Privacy of the people. Let us take, I am diabetic. If an employer knows me I am diabetic, and he can conclude that I may be underproductive and he may not offer me the job. So health data is very private data, and sensitive information may also exist in the healthcare data. So protecting this data needs a strong law. So data protection law is important, and a strong data protection law centered around privacy is important. After this, regulation. Clinical Establishment Act is essential in this country, and every state has to enact this. Private sector, private hospital setup has to be regulated, and this regulatory framework can ensure proper data generation. Finally, the trust of the patient, it cannot be taken for granted. So when the patient will be ready to give his data, only when he believes that the new system is providing him better care, rational integrated decision making. And insurance companies may take the data available based on their past history, and they can end up raising the premiums. The patient shall not feel that this system is harming him financially. So you need to regulate the insurance companies with regard to the access to data. These are the points we need to remember. The next article is, borrow from RBI to bridge GST gap. Center tells the states. You know, the GST Compensation Act was enacted in 2017 by Parliament. According to this, till 2022, the states who are losing revenue because of introduction of GST shall be paid compensation. So, the states are looking to the center to pay them necessary compensation, but center is in a catch-11 situation. What does that mean? Today, COVID-19 has reduced the revenues of center and the states. The center has imposed compensatory cess on luxury and sin goods to collect money and to pay compensation to the states. Today, this compensatory cess collected stands at 22% of the estimated 3 lakh rupees of compensation that has to be paid. So it means hardly it is 66,000 crore rupees of compensatory cess is collected, but the center has to give 3 lakh crore rupees. In this context, what the center has advised, states are requested to go to RBI and borrow the money. I am not in a position to pay, and COVID-19 has to be considered as an act of God. Now the states are worried. States ask that you are cheating on us. You are not fulfilling your commitment made in the law. Now the center says this is an act of God, nothing is there in my hands. And the Act 2017 did not envisage this particular act of God. So in this context, you have to borrow from the states, that is the center says. States ask the center to borrow and compensate them. That is what is the discussion going on. The next is about SC/ST subclassification. So states can have subgroups among SC/STs, says Supreme Court. You know, class legislation have to be avoided. It is against the Article 14. So creating subgroups among a homogeneous group considered as a class legislation. Article 14 clearly states that a divisions or subgrouping of a homogeneous group is violative of the principle of equality. In this case, SCs and STs, do they be considered as homogeneous group was the question. BCs were not considered as homogeneous group, and there are subgroups among them. The Supreme Court has clearly stated that the states can also subgroup the SCs and STs. Previously, when Andhra Pradesh tried to do that, the High Court of Andhra Pradesh dismissed it. Later it was challenged in the Supreme Court. That's how the things are going on. Today, what is the counter argument? The President of India, with the approval of the Parliament, includes or excludes the groups or castes into the SC/ST list. So is this authority to the states to subgroup the SC/STs will not interfere with the President's authority? The Supreme Court has clarified that the President is including or excluding the SC/STs, castes in SC/ST grouping, but states are subgrouping them. They are not including or excluding. So the state's authority do not come in conflict with the President's authority given under Articles 341 and 342. That is what is being stated here. Remember, what will be the consequence? You know, among OBCs today we have creamy layer. The same concept is expected to come among SCs and STs. Next is 5 members of Great Andaman tribe test positive for COVID-19. You know, there are 5 great ancient tribes, primitive tribes living in Andaman. Who are they? Andamanis, Jarawas, Ongs, Shompens and North Sentinelese. Among these, Greater Andamans got affected with COVID-19. They are just 74 in number. That is important. Next, India ASEAN must shed non-tariff barriers. Commerce and Industry Minister Mr. Piyush Goyal highlights what are the problems in India ASEAN free trade agreement. The first is ASEAN is imposing many non-tariff barriers. What are non-tariff barriers? Invisible barriers. Now, import duty or export duties, these are visible barriers. Quality conditions saying that these are the standards that have to be met. Like that, invisible barriers, if they are created, they are called non-tariff barriers. Second is rules of origin are not respected. Let's take China dumps their goods in ASEAN and exports them to India. India is indirectly becoming a dumping ground for Chinese goods. India's market is taken up by the Chinese goods. In this case, rules of origin, what they say is the goods which are being imported to India through free trade agreement from ASEAN shall be manufactured. A significant portion shall be manufactured in ASEAN itself. The next article, Turkey says it will hold military drills in East Mediterranean. So the conflict between Greece and Turkey is deepening in East Mediterranean. You know, Greece and Turkey, both of them are NATO members, but they have maritime disputes now. France and Italy, they are coming in support of Greece. Today, Greece is making an agreement with Egypt to define exclusive economic zone. Similarly, Turkey is trying to make an exclusive economic zone in agreement with Libya. These two exclusive economic zones are expected to conflict with each other. And Parliament in Greece is also ratifying sea boundaries with Egypt after doing the same with Italy. Now, Greece is trying to extend the boundary of its maritime from 6 nautical miles to 12 nautical miles. What the Turkey wants is, if the Greece does the same thing to its east, it can be considered as an act of war. Russia for concluding fighter helicopter deals by year end. Just remember here what India is trying to import from Russia. One is Sukhoi 30 MKI and MiG 29 and certain K-10 helicopters. These things you need to remember. And last year there was a question on these aircraft, what is that? S-400 long range air defense missiles. Solar tariff in India unlikely to beat Gulf rates. So today solar tariffs for kilowatt hour is around $3 in India. When you go to the Gulf countries, it is around $1.5. So almost the price is double in India. Why? The land price is very high. Capital cost is very high in India. That's why it is very high. That is what this article states. Thank you very much. Have a great day.